Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Lital Asher-Dotan. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Hunters, and I'm very grateful for having with me today the wonderful Tammy Moskites and Rob Geurtsen. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Why don't you go and introduce yourselves first?
Sure. My name is Tammy Moskites. I own a company called CyAlliance, and we partner with amazing companies like Hunters. And we're super excited. My background, I'm a career Chief Information Security Officer. Been doing this for a long time, 30 years. So I'm just really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Hello, Rob. How are you doing?
Excellent. Good to be here. Like I said, my name is Rob Geurtsen. I was a former deputy CISO at a leading sports and fitness company in the Pacific Northwest for almost 30 years. And today I am the CISO-in-Residence with Hunters, trying to be the voice of the customer, internal and external to the company.
What is the role of a SOC today? How was it evolving the last few years? What trends do you see around security operations?
Yeah.
Take it.
No, I think the SOC plays an incredible important role in the overall defense against cyber threats these days. Decade before, I would say, it was, like I said, very traditional antivirus, making sure that the alerts are being captured. But today, even though you have things like standards and policies and processes in place, there's always a piece of risk that you cannot remediate and you have to accept as a CISO for the company. And that's where you rely on detection. And I think that is where the SOC comes into play. And today that has massively been transformed. The volume of data that needs to be analyzed in a global infrastructure of a company is enormous and is growing exponentially, and an increasing problem for companies to deal with in a SOC. And I think that's where automation today comes into much more play than before in figuring out, what are the valid threats that need to be followed up on versus what is noise that is going on.
Excellent.
What's interesting about SOCs, like I think back about what the SOC was, right? And the SOC was the starting place for our security analysts. Those are the people we brought out of school and taught them about security. Right? They sat there and they looked at the feeds, they looked at the threat intel. But the big challenges back then is they had so much to look at.
Right.
I mean, it was like, NASA, they got screens everywhere and they're trying to look at this screen and that screen. There was no way to correlate anything except for utilizing the skill sets you had, and that was your SOC analysts. Those were the ones
and that's how they learned.
That's how they learned because they had
right?
to do everything manually. They looked at the antivirus feeds, they looked at cert feeds, they looked at whatever feeds they could get. Right. But as it matured and you're able to correlate and bring things in and being able to click on things and actually dig in, the skill sets are different, but the learning's still there. Right. So now you have really amazing threat intel people. You have really amazing analysts, and being able to bring, a junior analyst even into a SOC is they're able to actually, see a threat or see something that's there and click on it and then dig in and learn. And it's so much easier for them to actually be able to say, oh, well, this is how it all connects, right? It's that mind map kind of a thing that they can actually look at now and say, oh, this is where everything comes. Here's all the different things I need to look at. And here's the actual threat.
It's interesting.
It makes it more actionable, and the ability to react is so much faster than before, because you'd have like 8 guys in a room trying to figure out which screen to look at and which things are truly important.
It's interesting because technology plays a role in helping us advance the people.
It's both, right? So that's the thing. It's the ability to react and also the ability to learn.
Yeah.
I think that today's, the infrastructure parts, the applications, all the firewalls, the IDSs, the IPSs, all the technical stuff. Each vendor has their own security parts of the product that they sell, and each of them are great, but none of them are integrated. And that's what Tammy said. Analysts in prior life would have to jump from console to console to see what's going on, and then mentally make note of things that are happening. And maybe they had a notebook where they can keep track of what is going on and then correlate through their minds. That I think is time that we have to grow beyond to, if we're not already, and use more of the automation that the modern SOC provides, and give that information in a central console for an analyst. So don't have to click in on a console to figure out who the user was on a certain workstation at a certain time, but right click on a property and see all the details there.
And the threats, and there's more threats.
There
Right.
are
So,
more
so
threats.
think about it. 20 years ago, we were like, "Oh my gosh, there's a threat! Oh my gosh, there's a threat!" Right now, it's like you don't have the "oh my gosh" chance to even take a breath because there are threats every second.
And it's for everyone.
Yeah.
It used to be that only specific organizations were targeted,
Yeah.
big banks, they were
Yeah.
like specific. Now everybody is
Nobody's safe.
nobody's safe. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about today and now. Talks about slowdown of the economy. Some say security is safe from cuts because security is always important. Even a downturn can increase the risk for more fraud, more threat actors trying to gain some money out of cyber attacks. What do you think is going to happen in organizations? What do you see? Other cuts, other reorganizations other people thinking about security in a different way, or is it business like as usual?
I don't think it's business as usual because, as we said earlier, a CISO is also a business leader. And even though I think that security budgets are probably not the first item that a company will look at to cut that, I think that a CISO will be asked to, hey, can you contribute to resolving the problem of money being tight? And therefore, I think that leader will have the duty to look at his organization and say, what can we do differently? What can we do better in order to return some of the money to the central pot, so to say. And I think that's where, again, automation comes into play. Not just making decisions about, what is the types of risks that we're going to maybe postpone in being chased, but what kind of automation can I use in order to optimize my organization?
Tammy, you handle budgets in many organizations. How did you look when you had to cut stuff?
I cried. No. No, it's funny. When I work for a lot of companies, right? So I work for Huntington Bank and Home Depot and Time Warner. And there's all these companies that we've always been asked to cut budgets, no matter what it is. It could be a great economy. It could be a poor economy. They always look for money at the end of the year when budgets come. I always fluffed my budgets a little bit, because I knew that they were going to get cut. I think we all do that. But, in light of what's currently happening, and I talk to CISOs every day, everybody's seeing cuts, but it's different, right? So if we look at our capital budgets, right, and in whole, that's just like our project budgets, not just the maintenance stuff and the other that stuff is, you get two asks. First is, how do we reduce capital? And then how do you reduce your maintenance costs? So that's when you do, now in this economy, what I'm seeing more and more is that the CISOs are reaching out and asking, hey, our renewals are coming up, can you help? Right? So they're asking their vendors to help reduce some of that cost. And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Then they're looking at the capital projects, the big projects. And so maybe this last year, when things were a little better in the economy, they said, well, here's my top 10 projects and I'm going to do 8 of them. Now it's like, here's my top 10 projects and what ones are really must-haves, like things I have to do this year to actually move the needle in our security profile, but also adjusting the costs, right? So maybe I wanted to do these 5, but now maybe I'm going to do 5, 4, and 1 because of the way the cost buckets come. You know what I'm saying? Because that's kind of where the monies are. And then you're also being asked to do more with less, right? And so there's been a lot of layoffs, like you were saying. So with the layoffs, we are seeing that. And I am seeing it in some security companies. I'm seeing it mostly in tech, though. So that's really a lot of the impact. But doing more with less doesn't necessarily mean riffing people either, or having people eliminate their jobs. They're moving into other areas in their companies, sometimes in technology, sometimes in business, sometimes in audit. So that's the good news. So I think that in all, security budgets aren't increasing this year. I've seen them decrease for the first time in a long time, but they still want to do the right things right for the right reasons.
Absolutely. I'm sure CISOs are kind of like now sitting and planning, how do I reduce the risk while also reducing budget, which is not an easy thing to
No,
do.
it's not, but there's creative ways to do it,
Mhm.
right? I mean, there's manual ways, right, which become laborious, like I said earlier. But those are things that become problematic sometimes. They're not long-term solutions, but they might be a this year solution.
Or it could be that automation is the time to do now instead of delaying.
And that's why I'm saying those automation ones are the ones that come up, because you got to do more with less. To say, well, if I can automate this, as like we could take these headcount and move them to do the other stuff that we have to get done.
Absolutely. Rob, you wanted to add?
No, I think it's an interesting time for a CISO because, as Tammy said, I think other tech organizations are impacted probably even harder. That by itself causes a risk that a CISO needs to think about. What does it mean for how code is secured? What does it mean for the infrastructure, the pure basics, the network? How are they secured, and what does that mean for in this case a SOC? Does it mean that they need to look harder or broader than before? And I think that sometimes the savings come a little later, but I think that if a CISO sees again optimization in a SOC, make some investments this year that will have benefits in the subsequent years, this is a good time to have that conversation with the leaders of the organization.
And being able to show those savings, right? Saying, here's what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to save, whether it's monetary, whether it's employee-wise or whatever, but holistically. And here's also the improvement to the risk profile. I mean, that's from a security perspective. Whenever you're looking at something, it can improve our, brand protection, or, from a security operations center, being able to react quicker, faster. Those are important pieces.
That's a wonderful point that I wanted to segue to. So let's talk measurements and KPIs. What are they usually for security operations, and specifically when they are going through change, when they are considering bringing new technology, changing processes, bringing people, changing to maybe external people working? What are those measurements that you want to see improvement on, you're measuring? How people that are in our audience can think about that?
Yeah, I always joke, if I could write a book about security metrics, I probably could retire just on that, because
I think you should, Rob.
it's a long and hot debated topic, but I think it depends on what area being looked at. One of the things that I always use as a key metric above everything else is how fast can I detect, and then how fast can I contain the threat. Not remediate, because remediation and fully understanding what a threat is can sometimes take weeks, if not months, to figure out. But if I can contain the threat, stop the bleeding, I can breathe again, and we can work at a more casual pace rather than frantic. So that for me is a key metric on how successful are we. But then of course you start drilling down and what feeds that metrics, and then you get to items like what is the width of my coverage of my infrastructure, of my applications, how much am I monitoring, how much am I not monitoring, what do I know I'm monitoring, and what do I not know that I'm monitoring, which is an equally important question. And I think again that drives that incremental amount of data that we're dealing with in today's world. So but again, like I said, the key metric for me is how fast can I detect and how fast can I contain.
I find that metrics are, like you're saying, they change, right? The board back in the day, and they want how many viruses did we stop, or how many this did we stop, and today we could never do that, right? It's just the numbers would be ridiculous, and they're not meaningful,
right?
So meaningful metrics to me are something that are truly passion of mine, because nothing I hated more is looking at numbers that didn't have any correlation to how well we were truly doing, whether it was against my peers, peer companies, or how we're doing in the market as a whole. But metrics to me, especially in the SOC, is not mean time to repair, because that's not going to happen. But how fast we're identifying things, 0-day detections, things that we're able to go from we found this and we have a plan in place. That's another metric, because we can find something and we can identify something and get there, but then it's do we have a plan? Not did we repair it, but do we have a plan? And a lot of people forget that plan part, because That's the part that the board wants to know, right?
Right.
It's
How
like,
prepared are you
are you
for a
prepared?
breach?
So having a really good BCDR plan, having really good playbooks, all of those things are important for all of that. So the metrics is, for me is how fast do we detect it? Do we have a plan in place?
Do you think that having a plan in place is part of the maturity? That being prepared, maybe even getting people trained of what happened in real time?
Absolutely, because what happens is that, like we always do like roundtables, like incident response type of things. It's like, hey, something happened, everybody, some people in the know, some people not in the know. That doesn't always go well, but we do that anyway. But having those playbooks and having to know who to go to, those books, right?
And having the business.
Having the
also,
business, so having the name. And what happens if you're the CFO and something happens and I need to get a hold of the CFO and he's in Hawaii, right? I need to know legal,
PR,
whoever, right? So you have to have those follows, or the banks, right? So if
Right.
you had something that happened in a tier 1 credit card company like that, I need to know who to call at the different banks. And what happens if my go-to person isn't there? Who do I call next?
Right.
So it's all of those things of being really prepared, almost maniacally prepared. But you're never going to be prepared for everything, right? So it's that normal process, and knowing that there's going to be like
Improvisation,
Absolutely.
deviations.
That's it.
Yes. What do you think about that?
No, I definitely, you don't want to figure it out at the moment that there's an incident happening. And I think it is, as Tammy said, very important to have upfront agreements with your direct leadership, the leadership of the leadership, etc., all the way up to the board, about when they will be involved, and then if they are involved, what their role is, and particularly what is not their role. What for me always was very important is that I want my leaders to be informed. I not always need their help. I don't mind the questions, right? Of course, I don't mind the questions, but I don't want to deal with issues of answering questions that takes time away of actually remediating of the issue that we have going on. And that's what Tammy earlier said. Sometimes with CISOs that have not as necessarily a strong technical background, there might be a lack of experience in how complex it sometimes can be to answer a question. And like I said, that's why I was always focused on making sure that we had containment, because now we have the time to figure out, what really happened, how did it happen, what can we do to prevent it going forward, rather than still not having the answer about, are we safe now, are we secure? That's the question that I want to ask first, and then the rest will come later.
And that's what you want to communicate to your management.
Yeah.
That's the most important
I
thing.
think that's what happens a lot. I mean, I think that what we find a lot when we bring things out of our operations centers, especially, we measure a lot of different things. But what's most important when we do have a major issue or problem or threat, that once we have the containment and once it gets done, then we do our root cause analysis on what happened, how could we have prevented it. In a lot of cases, we couldn't. I mean, it's just stuff, right? So, but maybe there's something we could have put in place, right? Maybe there would have been a better tool. Maybe there would have been a better process. And that's what helps us in our next year's project planning.
It's wonderful. I'll finish up with the topic. You started working with us lately, Tammy. Wanted to ask, why work with hunters? If you were CISO, what would you say about hunters? Why did you choose us?
Because I liked you. No.
It's all because of me.
It's all because of you. No, I think, it's funny when you talk about partners in CyAlliance, we really take a lot of time to get to know our partners before they become partners, right? So we will learn about the company, we learn about the values, we learn about how the product works, we talk to your customers, and everybody's happy. Like everybody really enjoys the company. And then the other piece out the other side is that the people that are using your tools really find value in them. And so when I had the opportunity to actually look at the platform, I was like, oh my gosh, where was this when I was sitting in the CISO seat?
Technology evolved.
It did in the last handful of years, right? But it does what it says it's going to do. And that's what makes it so exciting, right? Is being able to bring something to the market that operations centers, analysts, engineers can use, and be able to actually see what's going on with that correlation ability, it's a win-win. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So for me, that was exciting. And also being able to take it to my CISO peers around the world, they're already loving it. So I'm here.
It's wonderful. Rob, you've been consulting hunters from early days, almost since inception, and now you are a CISO-in-Residence, and welcome for that exciting job. Why, and what's the journey you've seen since the company started?
Yeah, Ori and I got connected really early, even before the company formally started. But I think what really, where we connected is that we both were talking about, wouldn't it be great if, and of course SOC was the topic that we talked about. And having gone through a journey of outsourcing a SOC to bringing in, the platform of choice at a certain time, replacing that with the next platform, and then seeing all the problems myself along the way, the upsides of certain platforms, but then also the downsides. When we continued the conversation about, hey, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have these problems with storage or volumes of data? Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have analysts have to go through multiple consoles to figure out what an issue is, or what the root cause of an issue is? It was really the dreaming the art of the possible, and then seeing now things come to life where all these issues that at some point were showstoppers or roadblocks or speed bumps in past processes that we dealt with within a SOC now being overcome, I think is super exciting. And every time I see a presentation from the product team and the roadmap that's coming, I think that a lot of problems have already been addressed in how Hunters addresses the SOC, the modern SOC. But there's even more exciting things coming, and it makes me feel very good about what the future is of a SOC. And I think this is a pivotal moment in sort of SOC history, where traditional solutions are not going to be sufficient going forward, and platforms like Hunters will take it to the next level.
So I'd like to thank you for joining us in Tel Aviv today. It's sunny day. It's beautiful at the Hunters office. Thank you so much for flying to Tel Aviv to our headquarters. And I hope we'll have a chance to see you again soon in person and virtually. And Tammy, we are joining you in many of your events.
You are.
We're going to be at RSA. If anyone watching us is coming to RSA conference, please join us over there. We will be at Black Hat later this summer. So we have a year full of going around the United States and potentially Europe.
Yeah, I think we're going to do Amsterdam, London, Germany.
So I hope you folks will come and have some drinks and good food with us this year.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to that. And Rob, you'll be going with us around the globe as well.
Absolutely.
So we will be on the road. Looking forward to meeting everyone. And we hope this year, even things might get a little bit tough. We all have been through that. So basically it's focusing, and there's so many good things that are coming actually when you need to prioritize, right?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day.